Hello there, my name is Dr. Salim Javed. I am an associate professor at the Department of Journalism and Mass Communication at Lingyas Lalita Devi Institute of Management and Sciences. As you know that we have been producing a lot of e-lectures under the title of Understanding Cinema, where we have covered from the nascent stage up till what we are witnessing on a daily basis. We have covered when the films were silent, then how talkies came, and then how in a specific decade film started changing and started reflecting the society as a whole. Now, from the very beginning till 2020s, we have produced a lot of e-lectures for your convenience, and for last few weeks we have been talking about story, screenplay, other topics like motivation or conflict. And in this lecture, we are going to talk about specifically about screenplay and story formats. Now, screenplay is a word that you must have heard a lot of time, but if someone asks you what is a screenplay, then the very reasonable answer can be it's a special coded protocol document like a doctor's prescription for the eyes of one who will execute it with understanding. Now, this is something, it is a document which I'll be showing you during the lecture also, that it is a document in which a story is written in a specific format for having a lot of other information. Also, if somebody picks up a screenplay, and suppose he is not a student of mass communication, then it becomes a kind of a navigator for him to witness the visual journey of the individuals in a document. Now, it can also be said that it is an intermediated document which contains the blueprint of the film. Now, you must have seen some blueprints of a lot of things in your life. So when you see it on a piece of paper, it may not seem very attractive to you, but when it comes in reality, there is where you understand the grandeur of that particular building. In the same way, when you look where few words are jotted down and they are put in a sequence, and when you read them, so sometimes it happens that you and I are not able to envisage that what kind of a film it's going to be, but when you witness the product based on this document which is called screenplay, then sometimes it leaves you amazed. Then you wonder that what is being jotted on a piece of paper has come on screen like this, and that is a very satisfying journey. It is it is technically basically the seed of cinema. So when you see a seed, we sometimes wonder that how this one seed can become a plant, or can give a lot of other things also. But the germination process, and when it grows, the plant grows, then you realize no, this is really remarkable, from where like from a seed we are able to see such a wonderful product of nature. In the same way, screenplay is the seed, a technical seed. When you read it, you understand it. Screenplay is a document which technicians and which creative people and technical people both read simultaneously, and they try to extract things as per their department. Like suppose if I read something out for you, from which I'll be showing you the one format also. So when you see that particular document, a camera person will be able to extract specific information from that page for himself or herself. In the same way, costume will also extract the same thing for his or her department. So document is basically kind of a prescription. When a technician looks at it, technician means at this particular time is those who know how films are made. When they look at it, they realize what it meant, what does it mean, how should it be interpreted, how it should be executed, how it should be mounted. So it is a kind of a prescription. Like doctor, when we receive a prescription from a doctor, sometimes it becomes very difficult to find out what he or she has written. But when a chemist sees it, and then he realizes, okay, this particular medicine has been written, and this is what I have to give it to the patient, or if in some case, if the relative has gone to take the medicine. Now, a screenwriter has to create the main plot, the important subplots, and thus the structure of the story. Now, if you remember, when I was talking about story, I said stories flow like wind and migrate like birds. So in when you see a story, when we were talking about plot points, when we were talking about turning points, if you remember, I gave you an example of Gladiator and Erin Brockovich. Both films were received in the same year and they won Oscar in different categories. So, when a plot is created, when a story is created, plot, subplot is created, then twist, turning points, hook, and all these things that I'll be talking about in coming videos. So it basically, in a screenplay, you have a structure which is like completely worked out, which is like time tested, and we are able to, if we follow that diligently, chances are that we will be producing what was imagined in the beginning of the project. Now when it comes to the structure of a screenplay, so there is something called PCC formula, which means what is the premise of the story, who are the characters, and what is the main conflict of the story. Now this PCC model is like sometime it becomes very important to pay really good attention to what is the premise of the story, how and because I was listening to one very good writer a few days back. He said, Javed Akhtar I'm referring to, he said that when you write for a character, when you have a character, he gave an example of Gabbar Singh. So Gabbar Singh has, his dialogues will only be decided by the background that this Gabbar Singh comes from. If Gabbar Singh had been slightly sophisticated, then his dialogue delivery or dialogues could have been different. Had he been an urban, anti-hero, or had he been a, antagonist, urban antagonist, so he would have behaved in a different way. But he is a person who is from, a place where it is difficult for the system to reach. There are limited number of people, and the villages is nearby scattered, and so he will have a different sort of character. And the moment you have a different sort of character, or when you have decided upon the conditions of the character, which will basically flow from the premise, according to premise and according to character, you have to have a conflict. Like suppose if you are making a film which is part of the slice of life. Now slice of life is something which is which talks about very day-to-day affair, and in that day-to-day affair, your character cannot be your character will not be having superpower. And suppose on the contrary, if you are making a superhero film, then in that particular context, your character cannot be just a simple man. He or she has to have, something which is extraordinary, which makes him or her apart from her surrounding or his surrounding. So only, like suppose if I talk about Superman, so Superman will have a different sort of conflict. It will not be difficult for him, for Superman to chase somebody on bike and resolve the matter. Whereas if I make an ordinary film, then two people fighting can also be very conflicting. It need not to be shot in the way Superman film will be shot or Batman film will be shot. So premise, which is like really important. When we struggle in writing world, when a lot of people struggle with story, one of the challenges in writing stories is the premise. Where, why, how, and when time frame also this film is situated in this particular context. So it is like that ordinary efforts give you ordinary results, extraordinary efforts give you extraordinary results. So in the same way, depending on the premise, you will have character, in the same way you will have conflict. So this is how this PCC formula works. Now there is another very important type of structure which is like classic, and like nobody can deny this, though people say that 3-act structure is dead now, but doesn't matter how much we discover, we somehow are able to fit everything in 3-act structure. Even 2-hour film, or say that 5 minutes film, or suppose sometime you are only making a scene only, or you're shooting a scene only, and so even that scene will have a beginning, middle and end. So classic 3-act structure is beginning, middle and end. So setup is there, confrontation is there, and resolution is there. In simple language, it is beginning, middle and end, but not necessarily in this order. Now this is something very interesting. When I read it for the first time, I realized that okay, beginning, middle and end, this is something we have been hearing for a long time. And if you remember, there was a king, there was a queen, king died, and then the queen died out of grief. That is called plot. But if you say there was a king and there was a queen, and the king died and then the queen died, that is a story. Now that is the basic difference, that plot has got a reason. Plot has got a reason, specific reason, that why this, if something has happened, that why is basically plot. And there are a lot of things to discuss about plot, but right now let's keep it simple, and it is like classic 3-act structure, which talks about that there is a story, it will have a beginning, it will have a middle, and it will have an end also. Like all stories, like doesn't matter if it is open ended, but ended is there. So it doesn't matter what kind of a film is, whether it's a close ended or open ended, these 3 things need to be there: beginning, middle and end. And this is something which is like unavoidable formula, but the only alteration that you can have in your story is that you can make it non-linear. Like beginning, middle and end is a linear process, but when you make it non-linear process, there is where it works. Non-linear process really works, but what percentage of non-linear is basically the judgment. There is where the craft lies, that when to have, when not to have the linear order. It is very like you keep on putting things and then you just haphazardly rearrange it. That's not called non-linear. Non-linear has got a specific understanding, a specific requirement. It has got specific purpose. Without that purpose, you cannot take any story and make it non-linear. If non-linear produces, excitement, suspense, thrill, entertainment, happiness, sadness, only then it is advisable to go for non-linear, just for the sake of that I decide, for the sake of that I am not interested in making linear films, I will be making non-linear. It does not work that way at all. Even non-linearity has got a specific purpose and structure to it. Now what you are looking at your screen right now is a page from a screenplay. Okay, and there are a lot, like you must have seen some pages or a specific screenplay. Today I have brought the screenplay of Omkar, and I'll be reading that out, and then I'll be also as I promised that I'll be making the difference between script and a screenplay. So I've brought a script also, and I'm showing you right now on your screen. You are seeing a screenplay. Now there is an obvious difference between script and screenplay. Now please understand, right now what I'm going to say is very different from screenplay, but it is generally for the student of mass communication who are really interested in reading and writing. Now suppose this screenplay, that there are a lot of things written on right and left if you look carefully, and I'll be explaining it because it becomes very difficult to for you to read. So I'll be explaining each and every point during the lecture. Now, a very interesting thing about screenplay or script or television script or news script, which is called rundown now, and like special program script, all these things, if you look at on a broader scale, these are words only. Okay, but the arrangement, which is called formatting, okay, but the arrangement of words brings the difference or makes the difference. Like if there is a screenplay, so that screenplay will be written in a specific format. You cannot write a screenplay in the form of script, and you cannot write script in the form of screenplay. You cannot write a rundown in screenplay format, and you cannot have screenplay in a rundown format. So whether you write for digital, whether you write for television, whether news or entertainment, or whether you write for television, or whether you write for cartoon, every stream has got its own structure, and that is what students go to a college to learn, that structure, and how, what not to say is also to learn. Like suppose if I say, when I was in one of my classes and I was talking about some media law and ethics, so I was talking about defamation, then libel, and slander. So all these things, the way you write, that writing will attract attention. So it will attract attention in case if you write well and you write objectively or fairly, these are, which are the basic minimum things. So it will attract praise for you. But the moment you leave objectivity, fairness, brevity, and a lot of other things, that is where we get into defamation. In the same way, like suppose if you want to say that, like, you can't write that he or she is a criminal unless it has not been proven in court. So, but if you write beforehand, and suppose he or she comes out clean, then he or she will definitely put a case of defamation on you and I. Now, okay, this is a very different thing. Now let's stick back to our screenplay. Screenplay has got a specific, like, there are a lot of things written on right and left. When you look at it carefully, it is written in a specific, in a very specific format. Now what these words, like suppose on top of the page is written fade in. Now what does that fade in means? It means, like suppose when you start, when you enter in a cinema hall and you sit like this, or even in front of television also. So image comes gradually and slowly on screen. Okay, so that makes it fade in. Almost all the films in the world, I mean, some starts with cut also, but majority of the films, start with this fade in, and then you have a scene heading also, which talks about, exterior, writer's store, and day. Now, when you talk about all these things like exterior, so you will not be writing EXTE and the entire spelling. You will be writing it only as in caps EXT or INT. Or day and night, yes, you write it the full spelling, but EXT or INT is something which is like giving you an information for the sake of, because you will be making it. So when you make your schedule, this INT and EXT plays a very important role, whether that is outside or inside, that also plays a very important role. So scene heading becomes very important. Now there is something called action. Now when we talk about action, it is not the physical action that we are talking about. It is basically explaining, it's a narrative description of the event of a screen which you are about to witness. So when I'll be reading this from the script of Omkara, then you will realize that it is the writing skill which makes the difference when it comes to writing, or for that matter writing anything in the world. How beautifully, how pictorial you are makes the difference. There are some people who are very good at writing, they can write really well when it comes to describing a particular scene. So that description of a particular scene becomes action, and technically it gives you an action also, that how camera will move, how it will be shot, who are the people in the frame and how will they be behaving, where are they situated, what are they doing, what time of the day it is, or if it is night time. So action gives you the entire detail of those particular thing. Now in between, imagine suppose you are cutting between two scenes, so chances are that you may use some transition also, like dissolve is something. Now people usually in some very specific case, people now you would use dissolve, otherwise sometime it's the entire film, a particular scene of a film works in two windows also. Now when it says character's first appearance, now this is something that when we talk about character's first appearance, always remember that when it comes to character, like suppose if I say Anthony is a particular character, so that Anthony will always be written in caps. And when for the first time when Anthony is introduced in the screenplay, it will also have a very short description of that particular character where the name will be kept, Now, Anthony will definitely be of a certain age, will definitely be coming from a particular background, will definitely have some sort of a specific habit also. So when you introduce Anthony for the first time, you need to have a very short, technically a bio of character Anthony, and that Anthony will be all caps. Now, like character, so character, like in my case right now I'm talking about Anthony, so Anthony's name will always appear above his dialogue in uppercase, in uppercase. Now it means, like, if there is a character called Anthony, so we will write in between the page Anthony, which will be in caps, and then dialogues will be written below Anthony, so it will automatically qualify that these are the dialogues which need to be spoken is of Anthony. Okay, now dialogue is something which is like a lot of people wonder why we do not have good dialogue writers. Like 70s and 80s and up till 90s also we have had good dialogue writers. Right now, a lot of people are, they complain about it, that now we do not have good dialogue writers. Dialogue writing, as I said in the beginning, if you remember, that if Gabbar Singh had been from a city, his dialogue would have been different. And if Gabbar Singh is from a hilly area, his dialogues will be different. If he comes from plain, his dialogues will be different. If he comes from, lush green environment, his dialogues, his aspiration, his understanding will be different. So dialogue is driven by how well you know your character. Like a character from Bombay will not speak a very good Hindi as North Indians, and a very North Indian person will not speak very good Mumbaikar language in Uttar Pradesh. So where the character, what is the background of the character, what is the economical background of that character, what is psychological background of that character, what is emotional background of that character, all these things, when you understand and when you mix and try to give a voice to that particular character, that becomes his or her dialogue. Now there are sometimes you use subheader also. Suppose we are right now sitting in a studio, and from here if I have to move in PCR, so I technically, when I'm writing it, I just have to put a subheader in writing, and I can very easily move from this studio to PCR. So PCR, like suppose if these two locations are next to each other, so it need not to have a separate scene. You only have to put a subheader within a scene. So I'm only talking about one particular scene right now. Now the next thing is parenthetical. Now this is something really important, because this is basically where, for the first time when you're reading a script, director is telling you, or the screenplay writer is telling you, this is how you have to deliver your lines. Like suppose if I'm talking right now, I am sitting in studio right now and I'm talking to you, but had I been running and coming here and in a hustle bustle, I need to sit down and then I have to start speaking immediately, my voice will be like, so I was saying, oh yes, so I will have this sigh, this sigh. So I have to put this in screenplay writing also, because then the character will understand that this particular dialogue has this particular requirement. So parenthetical basically are digestible information, which after reading the screenplay, actor can understand and and can perform also. So it says that it is a note or instruction or direction on how a particular line of the dialogue will be delivered by a character. Like imagine, this happens in a lot of films also. Like suppose if the hero of the film have had a fight outside, like I'm talking about Zanjeer right now. So if he have had a fight outside, or suppose he's thinking something and then the villain comes and he says that why don't you listen to me and things like that. So his natural reaction will be that he will become violent. So in that way, when this is what I tell a lot of my students, that when it comes to dialogue writing or developing a story, you really need to get into the skin of the character. You, like, suppose it is said that only, actors go under the skin of a character. No, before actor, it is the writer or the director which goes, which crawls, literally, which crawls, which creeps under the skin of these many characters. Now, after parenthetical, you have extension, which says, Anthony. This is the way Anthony will be written in screenplay, all caps. Now it says in bracket, it says O dot S dot. Now this Anthony and O dot S dot is basically, you will find this particular thing. Whatever I have been talking about so far, they all are to be seen in a good screenplay sample. So Anthony OS, it is a note placed after the character's name, which means that how the voice will be heard on screen. Now this, OS means off screen. Right now, when you are listening to me, I am on screen, but if something happens and you get to hear some sound which is beyond this frame, so that will be off screen. Now Anthony OS, a note which is placed after character's name. Now OS is off screen, which means the character is physically there. If there is a sound, so the character is there, physically there, at the scene location, but he or she is not in this camera view. So what you are looking at me right now, when you are looking at me right now, it has got a frame, so you are seeing me within the frame. So there is no off-screen sound right now. I'm on screen and you're hearing my sound, but OS tells you that it is an off-screen sound. So something happens if somebody opens the door, or suppose if I have a bottle with me, or if I have a glass placed on a table, and if it falls, so you will hear the sound of falling the glass, when the glass is falling, but you will not be able to see that where that glass is, because your world through this particular window that I am communicating with you. So everything is on screen right now. But if anything which is beyond this particular frame and you hear that, that will be off-screen sound. Now, so when I say Anthony OS, so though you are listening to Anthony, but Anthony is not on screen right now. Now, there is very interesting term which is, after OS, you have OC. So, off camera, it is archaic term which is not used, to be very honest. And the last term is voiceover, which is basically a voice which originates from outside the screen location. So today, so far we have talked about what is a screenplay, how it works, and what are the things that goes into making of a screenplay. I thank you very much.